So there's this African Muslim guy here with big ears, big pointy ears on my screen. I'm not quite sure who he is or who he thinks he is, but he's I think the thing in the background says White House. I don't know, maybe he's some kind of spokesman for the KKK or something. He's talking about how what did you expect me to be serious? Be serious. Be sober. Um, he's talking about how the Republicans are basically grinding Congress to a halt. Um, and he's giving them shit. This is late 2014, and he's just giving them shit for it. Basically, right? And on some level, he's right, right? I mean, the thing they want would, I remember, like it's, they wouldn't pass basic like road fixing infrastructure. Just the basic things that make a government work on a day-to-day basis were not getting passed. Um, he's talking about how they're not, allowing, the ambassadors for Guatemala and Sierra Leone and Russia, through, But I mean, it's not just because they're Republicans, and he's a black guy, right? There's more to it than that. Specifically, one of the reasons that this is happening is because there's this idea in the United States called a lame duck presidency that is a really big problem in the way the system functions, right? So why are they not allowing the ambassador to come through? Because they know that there's going to be an election for the White House within a couple of years, and they want to wait it out and put their own person in. And so the system itself creates this this constant gridlock. If it was the other way around, the Democrats probably wouldn't do the same thing. Maybe they should, right? But to blame it entirely on the party or the people in the party or their ideology or whatever, I think is wrong. It's mostly systemic. It's the way the system operates. Because they know that they just have to wait something out. And if they win the election, they get their way, right? And especially considering the way that elections in the United States work, which is that, you swap back and forth every couple of years or every couple of elections, they have a lot of reason to just put a halt on everything until they get their person in. It is now 2016, and they're still basically making the same argument. It's become a little bit more explicit, as the lame duck gets near the end, right? As the duck stops quacking. Quack, 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 quack. Let's do that again, because I kind of like that as an explanatory. Maybe we can get a GIF. Somebody GIF this for me. Quack, 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 quack. The quack is currently quite weak. We can barely hear it. Barely. It's off there somewhere in the distance. Goldie over there, her ears are straight up. She's got something. But even she's not sure she can hear it. They don't want to let him. They don't want to let him nominate a Supreme Court judge. That's like his main. That's the main purpose. I mean, besides being the boss of the army, which isn't even true nowadays anymore. Americans pride themselves on their civilian military and everything. It's not. I'd like to find a living president and get them to really sit down and really level with people and be like, okay, they get a multiple choice survey, at the beginning of the day. And it's like, the differences are not really particularly profound. But the one thing that the president really does, really seriously does, is appoint these judges. That's what it does. That's what a president does, and they won't let it through, right? Because of the lame duck session. So I'm gonna propose an idea here, and this isn't an idea that a lot of people like, but I think that the logic underlying it is flawed, deeply, deeply flawed. And I'll point in mind that up here in Canada, we don't have term limits. Somebody can be prime minister for 30 years if they keep winning elections. And what that means is that we don't have lame duck sessions. And I would strongly suggest to you down there that you might want to consider lifting these constitutional restrictions on power in order to allow your government to function, so that you're not constantly held hostage to an election system that doesn't work anyways. If he could run, again, he would. Let's keep that in mind. He would run for a third term if he could, and he'd probably win too. And his agenda would not be held up like this, because the Congress wouldn't be planning for his removal. Whatever logic went into this hasn't really worked itself out well. I mean, I might concede a few points, if you lay the argument out, okay, but I think it's pretty obvious at this point that the damage of term limits is far greater than any benefit to them. Now, I know that there are a lot of people up in Canada, both on the right and on the left, but mostly on the right, that are arguing for more term limits. I don't think that they have any chance of actually succeeding. It's not a populist position up here. And I think that if you look at the differences in the way the governments operate, I think that I don't even think I need to make the argument. I think I just need to say, look, and it should be as clear as day that they're a bad idea, and this is why they're a bad idea. I'm listening to him talk, and I'm spitting, throwing things at the screen. Yeah, you created how many jobs? How many of those jobs are part-time? What's the unemployment rate? Yeah. Okay, what's the real unemployment rate, sir? But I mean, I really had to point this thing out. Okay. Because this is really, as much as I don't really like his policies, he is right to point out that the house is broken, the system is broken, and maybe people aren't. Sometimes when you're stuck inside of something, you miss the obvious, right? And if you take yourself away from the situation and you look at it from a distance, it becomes that much clearer. And I think that that's the case with these term limits. And if you're standing from outside your country and you're looking in, it's the most obvious thing in the world that the biggest single problem with the way that the government operates and the way the system operates is the term limits, which need to be gotten rid of yesterday. Okay, this isn't a new realization either. I remember in the 90s when Clinton was coming up on what should have been his third term. If he would have run and he would have won. A lot of people were seriously looking at that Um, and I think had it been changed then, well, let's all let's all stop and think for about a minute. Had we had a third Clinton presidency, people talk about Gore. I don't think Gore would have been much different than Bush. I really don't. But I think that if Clinton was allowed, another 2, 3, or maybe even 4 terms, a lot of the issues that we had come up in the 2000s wouldn't have. And likewise, I don't want to predict the future, okay? And as critical as I am of President Obama, I would prefer greatly to see him continue in place rather than be succeeded by either of the people that are in line for his job. And I think that the vast majority of American voters would agree with that statement as well. If the very basis of the election is that the person most qualified for the job should be elected, is it not completely ridiculous to tell the person that has the job right now that they're not allowed to run? Is that not the most irrational thing that you could possibly do? So yeah, I mean, I know that I'm going to put myself at odds with a lot of these kind of like progressive conservative types. Up in Canada is it's very much a right wing issue, right? You'll hear a couple of like murmurings on, this kind of, quasi left, but it's very much it's a hard right issue in Canada. I know that in the States, the lines are blurred a little bit more. A lot of people that call themselves leftists are really conservatives. And I know, but I mean, I'm really not concerned with what those people think. I think that they're wrong about a lot of things. And this is one of the least important things that they're wrong about. But I think that if there could be one thing that could be done that would have the biggest effect on the way that the government operates, it would be to abolish these limits. They don't have term limits in the Senate, right? They don't have term limits in Congress. They don't even have term limits on the bench. Why are there term limits in president? It doesn't make a lot of sense. It doesn't make any sense. And we see how it affects the way that the government operates on a day-to-day basis. So get rid of these damn term limits, and then maybe you can get the Congress to treat you as more than yesterday's man.